The infamous Salem witch trials took place in the spring of 1692 in Massachusetts. Over 200 innocent people were accused of being witches and 20 of them were executed. More than 300 years later, we know that the events that took place in the small Massachusetts colony were highly unjust. Christians in the 1300s believed that the devil gave witches the power to hurt people. This practice became known as witchcraft and spread throughout Europe from 1300 to 1600. Monomania had almost come to an end when the cause of the Salem witch trials started. They are said to have been caused or influenced by a war that King William and Queen Mary started with France, known as King William's War. The war took place in New York, Nova Scotia, and Quebec. The people who fled these areas went on to live in Salem, Massachusetts, causing a burden for the village. With the added burden and the tension that already existed between the Salem community members and the appointing of the Reverend Samuel Parris, who many did not like, the community was plagued with believing that all of it was because of the devil. In January 1692, 3 girls began to act strangely. Their behavior included screaming, making weird noises, bending their bodies in strange ways, and throwing things. These 3 girls were Elizabeth Parris, the daughter of Reverend Parris, his niece Abigail Williams, and Anne Putnam. In February, Jonathan Corwin and John Haythorne, both magistrates, pressured these girls for an explanation for their behavior. As a result, the girls blamed Tituba, Sarah Good, and Sarah Osborne. Tituba was Paris's slave. Good was a homeless woman, and Osborne was a poor elderly woman. After being questioned by Corwin and Haythorne for many days, Good and Osborne professed their innocence, but Tituba did not. She admitted to seeing several images as a result of the devil. Regardless of their innocence or guilt, all 3 were sent to jail. As a result of the witchcraft talk, the community became suspicious and paranoid of their neighbors, friends, and family. Consequently, this led to more women being accused. Martha Corey was also accused. Unlike the other women, Corey was considered to be an upstanding church member, so people thought that if she could be a witch, then anyone could be. Sarah Good's 4-year-old was even suspected of being a witch and therefore questioned by magistrates. On June 10, 1692, Bridget Bishop became the first woman to be hung on Gallows Hill, even though she claimed to be as innocent as an unborn child. A few days after the hanging, Minister Cotton Mather told the court that they were no longer to allow to use spectral evidence, which included evidence of dreams and visions. Although Minister Mather was highly respected, the court did not follow his demands and sentenced and hung another 5 people in July, 5 more in August, and 8 more in September. Increase Mather, Cotton Mather's son, also advised the court against the use of spectral evidence by saying it were better that 10 people suspected of being witches should escape than 1 innocent person be condemned. Responding to Increase Mather's demand, Governor Phipps ended the arresting of any more people. Many of the witches were released. Phipps is credited with ending the witch hunts by releasing those who were imprisoned and charged with witchcraft in May of 1693. By this time, 19 people had been hanged, and 1 man was crushed to death by heavy stones. Many of the accused died in jail, and approximately 200 people had already been accused of witchcraft. Although many lives have already been ruined, Judge Samuel Sewell apologized for their mistake and admitted guilt. After all was said and done, January 14, 1697, was declared a day of fasting and reflection for the witch hunts and massacres that had taken place in Salem. The trials were declared as unlawful in 1702, and a bill was passed in 1711 to reinstate the victims' reputations. Money was also paid to their families. In 1957, which was 250 years after the Salem witch trials, Massachusetts publicly apologized for what occurred in 1692. To this day, many people have attempted to describe what could have been the cause of strange behavior. One such theory, devised by Linda Caporael in 1976, blamed the strange behaviors on a fungus found in rye and wheat. Toxicologists claim that eating this fungus can lead to strange behaviors such as ones exhibited by Elizabeth Parris, Abigail Williams, and Ann Putnam. These behaviors include muscle spasms, hallucinating, and vomiting. The Salem witch trials had a monumental impact on the Salem community. People became suspicious and resentful toward their neighbors. They feared outsiders, and many were falsely accused and punished. Innocent people's characters and names were tarnished. And because people were so consumed with the witch trials, they neglected everything else they needed to do, like plant and cultivative. As a result, food was scarce, taxes were higher, and people had to sell their farms to help pay their prison fees and taxes. An advantage we have today in studying events such as the Salem witch trials is that we can learn from the mistakes of our ancestors so that we don't repeat them. We should not judge or accuse others of crimes they did not commit for the sake of putting a name in the crime. We must search for the truth and be considerate of others.